We've been unpacking the Singapore Budget 2022. In this segment, big changes to taxation to advance Singapore's green transition and an ambitious goal to go net zero. What are the opportunities and challenges for businesses, and how does it affect consumers? My guests are Chris Wu, who's tax leader at PwC Singapore, and Melissa Moy, who's head of sustainable business at UOB. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on Money Mind. Let's start with you, Chris. The details of that carbon tax are already out. It's going to be from $5 now to $25 in 2024 to 2025, and there's a view of it hitting $50 to $80 by the year 2030. Talk to us, Chris, if this came as a surprise to you.
Actually, Yasmin, it didn't come as a surprise, especially when the minister started talking about obviously trying to reach net zero by 2030. At $5 a ton, it's really doesn't quite move the needle. And carbon taxes, as you heard, is not about raising revenue. It's about driving behavior. It's about making sure that businesses which are emitting certain levels of carbon dioxide make all efforts to reduce it. Why? Because obviously that's going to be an extra cost once it goes up to such a rate. As I said, the first rate is going to be $25. And if it's passed on to consumers, which also the minister highlighted in terms of electricity, consumers are going to do several things. They're going to be able to choose. They're going to be looking at alternatives. And if there are alternatives, and if there are renewable energy supplies out there as an alternative, the answer is obvious. They'll switch.
Melissa, let's go to you. This hike, will it be enough to achieve Singapore's green goals?
I think when we look at the carbon tax, we can't really see it as a single solution, a panacea for, reaching our goals from a Singapore perspective. Rather, it's actually going to be a big impetus for companies who haven't yet started on their decarbonization journey, and an incentive to have a concrete timeline as well. I mean, now you'll see that high carbon business models actually have a high economic cost, and we're thinking that this will be a great incentive for companies to really meet these green goals. And what we're going to see as well is that to meet these goals, collaboration to ensure enough capital that's deployed, including private capital, means that sustainable finance will also play a key role. The other thing that I think that we'll see increasingly, and we've seen parts of this in the budget announcement as well, is the ecosystem continues to need support. In particular, UOB did a SME study earlier this year, and from what we understand on the ground, almost a third of all of the respondents said that they wanted incentives to adopt sustainable practices, that there were major barriers to implementing practices like insufficient knowledge, non-financial support, and so there's a real need to really look at how SMEs can look at most simply the way to react to these types of announcements, and to really look at these green goals as an opportunity to grow.
Chris, perhaps you'd like to weigh in as well. I mean, achieving net zero by mid-century. Talk to us about what needs to be done for Singapore to hit these goals and whether you think they're realistic. One
of these things is obviously going to be around upskilling everybody around the whole ESG concept, because it's going to be a team effort for everybody. So there's upskilling, new jobs are going to be created. There's going to be obviously a need to as well is to measure. There's going to be a recalibration of really what is your carbon footprint at the moment. Because obviously you'll have an objective in terms of your current carbon emissions, in terms of your direct, what you consume in terms of your utilities. Are they, is it carbon neutral? Is it renewable energy, or is it fossil fuels? Your indirect, in terms of what do you generate from the products and services you generate. So it's trying to work from there in terms of that calibration to reduce it.
Melissa, sustainability bonds and green bonds, they gained traction last year. I just want to know whether you think this will continue as more and more companies look to add ESG investing in their portfolio.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw that bond growth surpassed $1.6 trillion worth of issuance in 2021, and ESG funds has hit over $6 trillion globally. These are the US dollar figures. Here in Singapore, there's been a lot of work in terms of government incentives to promote green finance, from looking at ensuring that issuers are prepared and have the capacity to integrate sustainability and decarbonization into their business strategies, financial institutions with capacity building to ensure that our bankers are aware of the structures and the need to set appropriate KPIs and science-based targets in terms of sustainability-linked issuances. And then also a piece around ESG data where it needs to be standardized so that issuers and investors and other stakeholders can make investment decisions that are wise and we can avoid greenwashing. So I think we'll continue to see innovation in this space, and we'll also continue to see Singapore grow as a sustainable finance hub moving forward.
Picking up on that point, Chris, how do you suppose Singapore can build its competitive advantage when it comes to green finance?
Well, Singapore already has obviously a very good reputation of being a very strong capital markets. But really, Singapore should be taking the lead, obviously, in this area around green financing, driven again by its needs. So maybe touching on a point which also the minister raised in terms of the fact that EVs now constitute, I think, mentioned 4% of total cars population. So you just imagine if it's going to double, triple over the years, there's going to be a need for more building of charging points. And obviously, such infrastructure needs financing. Such building of infrastructure is going to demand financing, which obviously is going to be met through the likes of UOB in terms of green financing, issues of green bonds. That competitiveness will be driven, again, by the greater need as we become, have built a stronger reputation around issuing out more bonds. I see that infrastructure needs driving the demand for green bonds.